So to give us a little background about yourself and why you decided to go for this seat in the House.
So for me, I have served for the last 2 terms in Stonington as the select woman. And when Diana had decided she was going to retire and the seat became open, I thought it was a good opportunity for me to serve my district in a different capacity. And I thought with my professional experience that I brought to the table, I could do well for us up in Hartford.
Give a little background about your background, about that experience.
Yeah, sure. So I have a bachelor's degree in economics and finance and a master's degree in public administration. I have worked in municipal government for over 10 years and currently work for a large school district. So I've been in government, working in government for a long time.
And I mean, one of the big state issues, obviously, probably the dominant issue is our persistent budget problems. It seems like every session, once again, the state is confronting a deficit, and there's a debate on how to address that. And looking forward to if you were elected this session, you would be entering in looking at a $2 billion to $2.5 billion deficit projected. So what ideas would you bring to Hartford if elected as to how to begin to address that and try to bring some stability to our state government?
So what I think is, first of all, from the professional side of things, I bring my experience as a budget analyst to the table. But additionally, I think there are a lot of things that we can look at. Certainly, you're correct. We've had a deficit, and we have to think about where we're going to go and what we're going to do. If I'm elected, I will certainly give the state budget as much attention as I'm giving the town budget, and going through it line by line and looking at where we're spending things, what we're spending them on. Additionally, I think we probably have to also look at the process in which we budget as a state, right? So we have an appropriations committee and a finance committee that operate independently, and perhaps we look at bringing them together under one Ways and Means committee to look at the way that we're budgeting our revenues and our expenses. What comes first, the revenue or the expense on the budget side of the equation? So I think once in Hartford, I would be able to look at that process. And there are, and back to your question about different ways, there are many different things that we can look at. There are efficiencies to be had, I'm sure. But I'm not going to allow those efficiencies to be done on the backs of the middle class or of my district.
Mm-hmm. And what would be on the backs of the middle class in your district, and what things would you be concerned?
So I would be concerned with unfunded mandates to the municipalities. I'm certainly concerned with education spending and and I do want to look at that. That's another thing we have to look at in the budget process, is how we're budgeting education. It is certainly unfair for municipalities to have to finish their budget process not knowing what they're going to get for education dollars.
Do you think the state can reduce get its way out of this by reducing spending? Should tax increases in some areas be on the table? Will it be a combination of both?
I think it's going to be a combination of a lot of different things. I certainly think it's going to be a combination of a lot of different things. I don't think there's any one direct answer for that at this particular point in time. Mm-hmm. And again, I need to get up there and get a look at absolutely everything.
Mm-hmm. And any thoughts on one of the big drivers, the pension obligation years of the state not adequately funding those pensions? It's been playing catch up, and that's becoming a bigger and bigger percent of the spending. Any thoughts on that issue and what the state might do about that dilemma?
Yep. So I think first and foremost, we have to look at restructuring the teacher's pension in the obligation, right? Similar to what we did with the state employees obligation, we spread out the pension obligation and refinanced. When I say restructuring, I mean refinancing of that particular obligation. And so that's first and foremost at this particular point in time, I think. We have to work together. I think, another part of the budget question for me is that it's important that we all work together. We work across party lines, and I think for me, as the current select woman, I have shown that I have the ability to do that in the town that I serve in Stonington. So I think that's going to be a big part of solving either one of these things, right? The budget or the pension. We have to work together for the betterment of the state.
Would already earned benefits for people who now have pensions and looking at their pensions and any rollback of the benefits they were expecting, is that open, or do you think that's not fair to try to roll back benefits people were anticipating?
So what I think is that if both parties are willing to come to the table to talk about it, then I'm open to that discussion. But it needs to be agreed upon by both parties.
Joe, why don't you...
Sure. To go back to the budget, Kate, your predecessor was big with results-based accountability. Is that is that something that you would take up and try to promote up there to get a handle on the budget?
So I think for me, yes. I think that Diana had a good program in results-based accountability, and I think that we need to look at what we're doing. So the whole premise of that is we're funding programs, and are they reporting back to us what they're spending and if they're effective, right? And if we don't have that report back, how do we in the legislature know whether the program's effective and whether the tax dollars are being spent in the best way possible? Is the program successful or is it not successful? I believe that we need to have some sort of accountability for that, absolutely. Yes. And Diana worked very, very hard on that, and she was a trendsetter in that way.
Yes, the budget.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me ask you about another thing that's coming. College affordability. That's kind of become an issue. It's become an issue in Rhode Island. As you know, Rhode Island is paying for community college now for people. Do you have any thoughts about doing that in Connecticut? What would you support in that area?
So I would certainly support any ideas that came forward for college affordability. As you know, I have a 15-year-old, so I'm thinking about what's going to happen. As a widow and a single mother, I'm nervous about paying for college, and who wouldn't be? So I think that we have to support our state schools and our community schools, and we have to come up with a plan where our kids aren't coming out of college with debt. That's just, it's awful for them.
What about, let's start on the lowest level, what about free community college? Would you support that?
So I would be happy to look at that and examine what the cost side of that would be, right, for a program. I'm absolutely interested in hearing about that and looking at what the plan would look like. Yes.
And that's kind of sort of part of a bigger picture of job creation in the state. Connecticut has lagged behind its neighbors in job creation, particularly Massachusetts and New York since the recession. What's some of the things you think the state could be doing better or has to do in order to drive job growth?
So I think first and foremost, one of the things we have to do is we have to make sure that our cities are funded and vibrant. Young people, millennials, we know, want cities, want downtowns to live in, right? So they want to be able to live in a thriving downtown where they can walk to entertainment and walk to restaurants. So I think that is one thing that we have to make sure that we have here in Connecticut. We have jobs in Connecticut that we need to make sure that we're strengthening the pipeline that feeds those jobs. So manufacturing jobs, pharmaceutical and science jobs. I think it's very important that we make sure and we support the technical schools, the high schools that may be feeding some of those manufacturing jobs, in addition to our state schools that may be feeding some of those more professional engineering jobs. So I think that is important.
Talking about vibrant cities, was it the right decision to bail out Hartford, or should they have been left to their own devices to figure that out?
Well, so I wasn't part of that decision, so I don't know that I feel that it's right or fair for me to make a decision based on that.
Fair enough. You've been endorsed, if I'm correct, by Representative Urban?
I was, yes, yeah.
Has she given you some idea of what to expect and what to anticipate and how things might work up there?
So she has given me an idea about that. Additionally, I have also had some experience in doing trying to get some legislation passed through one of the professional organizations I belong to. So yes, I've been lucky in that regards. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have been.
Kate, with that, about what to expect, you have a few things you're juggling.
I do.
In Hartford, not far from the capital, for the Hartford
Capital Region Education Council. Correct.
Thank you.
Yep.
You have that.
Yeah.
You are a select woman
I
in
am.
the town of Stonington. You are on the K-12 school building committee. Probably missing some, but those are the three big ones that I know of.
Yeah.
And if you're elected, you're going to be a state representative. Can you juggle all that? Is there enough time in the day for you to meet all those, or are you gonna resign from one of those? Obviously, not your job, but they're either selectmen or
right. So no. So as you know, a state rep is only part time. Sure. Right? So most state reps have a full-time job. So I certainly intend on keeping my full-time job. And I'm lucky enough to work in Hartford, so I'm very close by. I believe that I can, yes, juggle all that right now. Yes, I do. And my term as select woman would be coming to a close. I would take office in January, and my term is up actually in November. And I haven't made any decision at this point as to what I will be doing.
Whether you would run again.
Right. Okay. Yes, right.
But your intention is to at least serve out the term, at the very least, as select woman? Is that correct?
So I don't know that I've made that decision at this particular point in time.
So if you're elected in November, you're not sure if you're gonna serve to the following November.
Right. Okay. I think we'll see. I think that I want to see through the K through 12 building committee. The K through 12 building committee. Absolutely. Okay. Right. I'm committed to that, and I'm committed to the town. I suppose we'll have to see what happens in November. But yes, I'm busy, but I certainly am able to handle more than one thing at once.
A couple of social issues the Democrats have raised, mandatory paid family leave. What's your position?
So I think that, yes, I'm in favor of that at this particular point in time.
And why is that, and how would you address concerns from some businesses about it?
So, well, we would have to come up with a way to fund it, right? For the state to have a funding source for that. Why do I think it's important? I think it's important because paid family medical leave, well, you have Family Medical Leave Act, right? So you can, if somebody's sick, and I myself can tell you from personal experience, I've had to take FMLA. As you know, my husband passed away from cancer, and certainly towards the end, I had to take some time off, and I was lucky enough to have sick time and vacation time, but you have to use all that, right? So if you are in a job where you don't have those sick time and vacation time benefits that you can use, then what happens? You can take paid family medical leave, but you can't be paid? And how are you going to afford that? So I think it's an important issue, and we have to think about it.
How do we pay for it? Is it employer contributions, employee contributions, a combination of both?
I think it's a combination of both. I really think it's a combination of both.
Mhm. And how about the $15 minimum wage? Another kind of plank we've seen in the Democratic agenda.
Yep. I'm in favor.
Mhm.
People have to make a reasonable living wage.
And to the concerns you hear from small business, that it, might be detrimental to them, the expense. If I'm a small business employer and now I have to pay $15, we've heard small business say, well, that could be the difference between making a profit or not for me. It might mean reductions in staff. And I'm sure you've heard the concerns from small business about how they might be hit by having to pay a minimum wage that high.
So I think that all has to be looked at, but maybe there are other ways that we can help small businesses so that paying that wage maybe isn't of concern. Maybe there are other programs, right, and investments that we can make through our Small Business Association programs that we have.
Mm-hmm. Would you be open to any exemptions, age-wise or such? Because another concern we've heard is there might be less teens hired when you raise the minimum wage.
You mean like you mean when you say age exemptions, you mean younger workers. So I think that I'd be open to listening to proposals.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Joe, you got something or?
What about legalizing recreational marijuana in the state of Connecticut? I don't know if that bill's going to come up, but it's happening in every other state around us. And
yeah, I should be asking that of more of the candidates.
Where do you stand on that?
So I think that we have Massachusetts is past it or passing it. I think it's probably a good idea to watch and see what's happening in our surrounding states. I am concerned that we don't have a way for our police to test for it, right, in the field. Mm-hmm. So that is concerning to me. I think there's a lot of open questions and concerns that come up with that. We have passed it for medical marijuana use.
Yeah, so you sound like someone's not ready to take the plunge on that yet. You want to...
So I think I want to see how it plays out, and I think that I think we need more information in regards to how we are going to be able to test for it in the field.
Mm. Any concern as someone who's been involved in education and been a priority for you, the potential effect on the message it sends to?
I am concerned. I am concerned with that. I'm also concerned with, we have an opioid crisis right now that we have to that we're dealing with, and I think it's very important that we put our resources into dealing with that. So I'm not sure that legalizing marijuana at this point is the right way to go. I think there's still more stuff that needs to be done.
The Republican candidate has talked about phasing out the income tax, arguing it would be a great signal to send to business. That Connecticut goes back to a time when it didn't have an income tax. How do you view that? View that agenda. What would be your position as a legislator if you were presented with that?
Phasing out of the income tax?
Yeah.
Well, I think I'd have to understand how he's going to generate revenue. I think the important thing to understand is revenue for a state comes from taxes and fees. That's how your programs are paid for. So I would have to see the other side of the equation. Mm-hmm. I don't know how we're going to establish that.
how do we pay to meet our transportation needs? I think it's general agreement that the state needs to invest in upgrading its transportation structure. We've
Yeah.
seen studies with, I think it's 300 bridges are been seen as deficient.
We have.
There's an argument we need to widen some of our highways. So what's your thoughts? How does given its fiscal problems, how does the state address those needs?
So I think first and foremost, I would like to see in November there is a question on the ballot about a special transportation lockbox funding. I hope that everyone will vote to pass that. We need to have a special transportation lockbox for those funds. In addition to, we are going to have to look at a toll system for Connecticut. I think once, if we have the tolls in place, we're bordered by states that have tolls. And I think it's time that we are going to have to implement tolls. We can put up electronic tolls. We don't have to have the booths like we had previously. And we can look at having a phased-in system. We can start with tractor-trailer trucks going through the state and look at how we move forward from there. But I think it is important that we have funds to fix our roads. I absolutely agree with you that the infrastructure and the roads have to be dealt with.
And what's your view on funding for arts and tourism in the state? Often some of our nonprofit art and tourism institutions receive state subsidies. And we hit differing views. Some people point to the importance of that and its economic contributions. Others take the position that when a state is having the struggles we have, that it shouldn't be spending on anything but necessities. So how do you kind of view the whole arts and cultural and tourism issue and how much state support it should receive?
So I think that's an important issue, especially for me coming from a tourism city, right? So Mystic, Stonington, and Pawcatuck those are big tourist areas. And this whole area is, right? Southeastern Connecticut is a big tourism area, and we have a lot of different things here that people are drawn to. So I believe that we have to invest in that for our state. Other states invest in tourism, and I think it's important that we invest in it. That brings people into our economy to spend money in our restaurants, in our shops.
Speaking of tourism, how do you feel about a local hotel tax to help Stonington, especially Stonington,
Right.
Mystic,
Yeah.
offset some of the
Yeah.
costs, the police calls to the hotels,
Mm-hmm.
the ambulance calls to the various attractions,
Yeah.
The roads, the effect
Yeah.
on the roads.
Yeah.
Where do you? That's been unsuccessful up there for years and years, and nobody. Is that something you would support? Or
It has
try to get
been.
through?
It has been unsuccessful up there. It is certainly something that I am willing to take a look at, and I am not opposed to that because, as you said, it is used in those instances for just those towns that are responding to those types of needs.
Politics has gotten, at least in Washington, arguably very tribal, very highly partisan.
Yeah.
Sort of the art of compromise, has been lost. How do you've been in politics at the local level, now you're running the state office. How do you view the environment we're in now, and what attitude would you bring if elected?
So, that's a great question, and thank you for asking that, because I think it is so important that we work together and work across party lines. It is not about whose idea is right and whose idea is wrong, or whose idea is better. It's about fixing things for the betterment of the community. My job, as my regular profession, is to act in the best interest of the taxpayers that I serve. And my job as a politician is to do the same exact thing, to act in the best interest of the citizens that I serve. I feel that it is really unfortunate the level that we have seen. I've just as you know, I've been involved in local politics for a while, but I come from a political family, and I've seen such a difference now in what is out there and how people behave. And I would like to see a return to dignity and to working together.
Anything else, Joe?
We do. I have one question now. So, we recently wrote a couple stories about the sexual abuse issue in the Catholic Church. And as you know, in Pennsylvania, they had a grand jury, and now there's grand juries now in New York and New Jersey and Illinois and I think 5 other states.
Mm-hmm.
The Attorney General and the Chief State's Attorney's Office here in Connecticut tell us that they're not really empowered to start an investigation. It's been suggested, and we had an editorial about this the other day, there might be a need to change the law to allow the Chief State's Attorney to begin an investigation, a probe, a panel of grand jury to look into this issue. Would you be in favor of such a law giving them the power to do that?
I think I'd have to see what the law was, certainly.
Is it an issue that we need to take a look at?
Is what an issue that we need to take a look at? The grand jury?
What occurred in the church in terms of the transfer of priests and the sexual abuse of children.
So
over decades.
Right. No, I know. Believe me, I know. It breaks my heart. I believe that, yes, we have to look at it. And I believe that the church has tried to look at it. I read your editorial, so I did see it. I think it is so sad and heartbreaking for all of us.
Yeah, we were just, or any organization, even if it's, in this case, this issue in the Catholic Church, but there could be other organizations that have
right.
systemic
Yes.
problems, and it seems to be that the Chief State's Attorney says he's sort of handcuffed, that he can go after individual crimes, but doesn't seem to be any sort of broad powers to kind of look at his organization.
So you put it kind of differently. So I think that, I would certainly look at legislation that came across, if it were to come up to Hartford, if I were there. I would certainly be happy to look at legislation regarding that. I'm not, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know that they don't have those powers. I believe both of you when you tell me they don't.
Yeah.
So it is probably something that we need to look at and expand. Did I answer your question,
Yeah,
Joe? I'm
yeah.
sorry.
Yeah. If you don't have anything else, I wanted to give Kate a chance.
I don't have anything else. That covers it.
Anything you want to kind of wrap up for us? Things we maybe didn't cover. Kind of closing argument.
No. I think that you. I thank you for the opportunity. I hope to be able to serve the people of this district, of my district. And we'll see what happens. But I thank you very much.
But thank you for coming in.